And since, who wants to start? It doesn't matter to me. Emma, you're on my screen, so why don't you go ahead and get started?
Sure. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Sonnenblick, and I am an admissions counselor at Swarthmore College, located right outside of Philadelphia. And I'll throw it to Becca.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. My name is Becca Allen. I'm at Boston College in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, y'all. My name's Will Haley. I'm one of our senior assistant deans of admission at William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Excellent. So today we are going to talk about the importance of extracurriculars in your application. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. We've got a couple slides for you. And let's see, let me just put it in presentation mode and we'll go from there. Slideshow. All right, that looked good to everybody? Great. Perfect. So this is just a kind of a snapshot of what we'll be talking about today. A well-rounded misunderstanding. What do extracurriculars entail? Quality over quantity. Your narrative, the order of your activities, the Common App activities list, and some resume tips. And we certainly will open it up for questions at the end as well. So I'm going to get started with a well-rounded misunderstanding. Some of you may have heard this already. I think there's definitely this misconception out there that everybody has to be well-rounded. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, we are all absolutely looking for well-rounded campus communities. At Boston College, we have over 300 clubs and organizations. We are absolutely looking for students to fill each and every one of those spots, from music groups to Division I athletic teams to community service clubs. I mean, again, you name it, anything you've been involved with in high school, you can absolutely continue on our campuses. But it doesn't mean that every single applicant checks the box for all of those 300 clubs and organizations. So I think oftentimes students think that, you know, they need to be this ultimate Renaissance man or woman. And that is not the case. That's not a prerequisite for college admission. Whatever is important to you is important to us, and my colleagues will share a little bit more about different types of activities and what that might look like on your application. But know that if you aren't involved in 10 clubs with 10 different leadership positions, that's okay.
Yeah, and Becca, I use the exact same kind of terminology when I talk about extracurriculars. What's important to you is important to us. So when you're talking about filling that extracurricular list on your common application or specific apps for different schools, think about anything that you got going on outside of the classroom is worth putting on your application. So if that's clubs, if that's sports, if that is community service, do you work part-time, doing some kind of internship? It might be folks that are working enough hours, it's more like a full-time job. If you're doing research, I know particularly in this area and around DC, lots of opportunities for that. So I see that a lot for folks in this area. If you have big family responsibilities, maybe parents are working late at night and you have to take care of younger siblings during that time, maybe part of religious organizations or just general hobbies. If it's something that takes up a lot of hours in your week, that's really important to you, so we want to see it. I think when you say the word extracurricular, I think a lot of people just think about what goes on in the school, the clubs available to you, doing sports after school, but it really is everything that you have going on outside of the classroom. And Julie, if you're spending time doing it, it's important. We want to know the whole part of the idea of the application is for us to get to know you. Your transcript is only a small part of you. The rest of your application is where we really get to know you. And I don't know if there's kind of a better representation of who you are than what you're doing in your spare time. And that's what this extracurricular list is all about. And we always want to preach kind of quality over quantity. So you've got, at least if you're doing the Common App, you got about 10 spots to kind of fill. There's different places that you can talk about other things that if you have even more than that you have going on. But I think we really always want to focus on the quality of those activities, things that you are really diving in deep to. I know a lot of William and Mary has like a campaign that we do for our students. Becky, you mentioned 300 clubs and organizations at Boston College. We have over 500 at William and Mary, which is way too many. Like, we don't need that many. Anybody that comes to William and Mary, don't start a new club. Like, we're so good. But that exact idea of like, students can get trapped in this idea of doing everything that they're interested in, but I think the more impactful extracurricular lists are the ones where you dive deeply into a couple of different activities, things. So it's great to see things that you've kind of done all 4 years or for an extended period of time, but at the same time, don't feel like you should continue with any kind of activity that you aren't passionate about just because you feel like it's going to look good on a college application. That's something I think we'll talk about a lot, of this idea of like what looks good versus the reality. And I think that quality over quantity is a huge part of that. Obviously, things that you've been able to spend a lot of time in, dive into leadership, are great ways to kind of show that depth over just if you do 10 things for one semester in high school, it's definitely not nearly as impactful as that 3 or 4 things that you've done for a long time, that you've dove really deep into. Maybe you have some kind of leadership position, whatever it is. So again, kind of showing that time, that passion, that commitment is so much more important than just the number of things that you've got going on.
So your narrative, I think oftentimes when we're reading applications and we're looking at students who are interested in maybe some niche academic programs, we're wondering why, so what's your narrative in your application? An example that I can use that's specific to Boston College is our human-centered engineering program. So it's the only engineering program that we offer. It's pretty unique. It's also the only program that students have to apply to coming out of high school. It's also the only program that we allow students to list a second choice major. But as we're reviewing those applications, we're really wondering what the students' fit is outside of the classroom. All the students who are applying to this program have taken the most demanding math courses, the most demanding science courses that their high school has to offer. But a lot of these students also kind of show some hands-on engineering experience in high school. They've been involved in the biomedical club. They've done some sort of research in terms of water filtration in Africa, right? So something that's really relevant to the work that they would be doing in the classroom, because we only have 50 spots in each incoming class. And so we're really looking at that across all academic disciplines, and some colleges and universities will consider it more than others. But how have the activities that you've been involved with for 4 years, how do they share that narrative? Are you interested in a business program? And if so, it's not too late to even do a shadowing program, right? Talk to family, friends. Maybe you have the opportunity to spend a couple hours with somebody and pick their brain just to get a sense of what an accounting major really looks like. You might decide that accounting is miserable, and in fact, marketing might be a better path for you. So this is definitely something that we're taking into account. Students who are interested in education oftentimes have babysat, they've tutored, they've been involved in inner city school programs. So think about how you can kind of share this narrative, less about listing activities on an application, and maybe you're using it in an interview. Maybe you're talking about it in a short answer or supplemental question. So this is something that definitely kind of weighs into how we review applications.
Great. So when we think about the order of activities, it's really important to list them in the order of what is most important to you, because that signals to us sort of who you are and where you're spending the highest concentration of time. And so when you're thinking about how to order your 10 activities, if you're using the Common App or a Coalition app, or I think it's 5 if you're using the QuestBridge application, you want your first activities to be the ones that are the most important to you. And this might be that it's an activity in which you spend the most time. It could be that it's the activity in which you hold the highest level of leadership. It could be the activity through which you've shown the most sustained commitment. So meaning that you do this activity the most days a week. You've also done it for all 4 years, whereas maybe other activities you've done for 2 years, which is totally okay. But we want you to signal to us what is the most important to you by putting it first. And then from there, as you're ordering, if you are in 8 activities, the 8th one would be the one that you maybe did in 9th grade for a semester and then realized it wasn't for you. And so that way it's ordered in a way that signals to us sort of what is important. Unfortunately, we won't be able to show sort of an example of what the extracurricular list would look like from our side. But I think something else that's really important is that that you fully explain yourself. And so we do know the abbreviations for many things, right? If we see NHS, I'm going to think National Honor Society. But if your NHS stands for the National Healthcare Society or something, you want to spell that out for us and fully explain what it is that you do. Similarly, if you have a leadership position, you want to really write that out and explain it so that we have an idea of what does it mean that you're the secretary of the band? What does that actually entail? Is it just a title, or are you doing work for that position that would transfer to maybe a field of interest in your college experience? And Beck, I'm going to throw it to you for resume tips.
Great. So these are just some tips. I have this broken down into a couple of different sections over the next few slides. I don't really want to read to you, but I think these are important things to think about. When you're actually putting together a resume, now remember, resume different from that common application activities list. Many colleges will allow you to upload an additional resume through that application. And so certainly if you're given the opportunity, if you have a resume, it's certainly something that you can share. But also as you're applying for internship opportunities and research opportunities and leadership positions, always really great to have a resume. I always actually encourage students to do a resume first, and then based off of what you've put on the resume, actually write the Common App activities list. It can help you to kind of organize your thoughts a little bit better. But in terms of personal information, make sure, I think this is a big one, and this is true throughout all aspects of the application process. Make sure that your name is consistent across all documents. So if you go by a nickname, but your transcript has your full formal name that you were given at birth, make sure that that's the name that you're using on your resume, on your application, so that all pieces will get linked, especially students with common names. Different pieces can be matched to different applications. This is also true when you're creating your College Board account and registering for the SAT or the ACT. Activities, some of these are things that have already been talked about a little bit, but some things to highlight. Activities that you've been involved with in high school, whether in school, outside of school, but that 3rd grade spelling bee championship is not something that needs to be included on your application. We've talked about abbreviations and full names. Make sure that you're sharing part-time work. Be specific. I think more than anything, sharing details, right? So that we really get a full sense. Paying attention to the order in which you list activities. I think this is a little bit different when you're putting together a resume than when you're compiling your Common App activities list. You want to be listing the things that you're involved with most recently. If it's something that you did for 1 year as a freshman, that should be towards the bottom of the section. If it's something you've done for 4 years and that you can continue to do, that can be towards the top of the section. Your resume really should be all-encompassing. For some students, especially students who have been very involved and have a lot going on, the Common App activities list can be a little bit limiting. It does cap you at 10, whereas the resume can really include everything that you've done. And then remember, hopefully this goes without saying, although I've certainly seen some resumes where this has been the case, remember that the purpose of a resume is to tell people how you spend your time and to make yourself look good. And then of course, always telling the truth, right? There's been instances in the past where I've seen a student share some very impressive information by way of the activities list or the resume. And then the school counselor has talked about how they haven't been as involved as maybe other students are. And so that's pretty telling and leads me to believe that maybe a student is elaborating. So again, make sure that you're always telling the truth. Formatting. This is important because this is where things can really get messy. Make sure that you're paying attention to verb tense. If it's something you did in 10th grade and don't do it anymore, it should be in past tense. Something that you're currently doing should be in present tense. Be consistent in the way in which you describe activities. You can use a full sentence if you want, or you can use phrases, but just make sure that throughout you're being very consistent. Try your hardest to limit your resume to 1 page. You're 17, and yes, maybe you've done tons and tons of things, but it's pretty important that you try to keep it to 1 page if at all possible. And then also too, feel free to kind of add additional categories if you've been heavily involved in one area. So if the bulk of your involvement is related to community service, you might have a separate community service section on your resume, whereas your best friend might have a separate athletic section on their resume. And then oftentimes students will have alternative resumes, especially if they're maybe getting recruited to play sports or they're auditioning for BFA programs. You might actually have a separate resume that just highlights specific involvement in that particular area. And at this point, we would love to take questions, and certainly also we know that your counselor will be sharing the slideshow with all of you, but if you want to snap a photo so that you have our contact information, we're certainly happy to do that. But please feel free to ask us anything, and I will stop sharing here.
All right, so while students are thinking up their questions, and please either unmute yourself or go ahead and put it in the chat. Can each of you say where the extracurriculars come in your evaluation? Obviously, the transcript is the most important piece of information. So how would you rate the extracurriculars?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's just one more piece of the puzzle, right? You're right. Transcript, absolutely the most important part, but I would say that extracurriculars play the same weight as essay, that play the same weight as letters of recommendation, right? It's just one more part. Boston College is a place where students are very involved. They're doing lots of different things on campus. Social justice and community service is a big part of what our students are getting involved with. So that's all certainly things that we're looking at when we're reviewing applications.
Thank you. Emma?
Yeah, so very similarly to Boston College, at Swarthmore, we definitely do consider your extracurricular involvement, but we consider it sort of equally with other parts like the essays, like the letters of recommendation. And it's really just all a part of this holistic review process where we're considering each piece to get an idea of like who you are, where you fit into your communities, and where you might fit into ours. While William and Mary might have too many clubs, I think that we also have a similar problem where we definitely have fewer clubs, but we also have fewer students. And so at Swarthmore, we have about 1,700 undergraduate students, and we have like 150 plus clubs. And so we need to make sure that we are enrolling students who will become involved, or else our clubs will all die and we will have like 2 members in each. And so we are pretty cognizant of ensuring that students are involved in their communities, whatever that means to you in your context.
Thank you.
Yeah, and certainly, we're also doing very much a holistic application review. I think for us, it's kind of like you got the academic pieces and then the non-academic pieces, and I agree. I don't think there's like a significant, more weight to the extracurriculars than the essays, letters of rec. I think in my experience and just kind of in our committee, I think we see a more differentiation in extracurriculars than I think essays and letters of rec a lot of the time, at least in our applicants. So I think maybe sometimes it becomes a bigger piece of the puzzle than those things, just because it is, I think, just a little bit more variable between students. But at the end of the day, this whole process, the whole, application, like we need to, know that students are going to be successful when they get to William & Mary, when they get to Swarthmore, when they get to Boston College, and, doing well in high school academically is a pretty good indicator of whether a student is going to succeed academically and socially at the next level. But extracurriculars are a huge part of that. We know that the students that are more involved in college are also more successful in the classroom. They graduate at higher rates, all those things. So seeing that students are involved in high school is a great just kind of predictor that they're going to be successful when they end up matriculating at us.
Thank you. All right, we do have some questions. Can you comment on how you look at increasing extracurricular involvement over high school years? I'm not exactly sure what they mean. Like I guess if you start off slow and then they build it up as they get more comfortable with the school, I mean, you know, does ninth grade extracurricular matter as much as a senior year extracurricular, or is it all pretty even, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're taking it all into account, right? I think the one thing to keep in mind is that there's no one perfect formula, right? We don't have our crystal ball to say if you participate in X, Y, and Z, you are guaranteed admission to these top 10 schools, right? That's never going to be the case at any of our schools, at any of the schools that you're applying to. And so I think, you know, we're taking everything into context. Certainly for first year students, first years can be really tough, right? And we might see that on the transcript. That might be reflective in the activities list. It might be talked about in letters of recommendation. And then we see progression, we see improvement, we see growth. And so that's all something that's positive. But I think, and this can be relevant in lots of different pieces of the application, and I think is relevant to some of the other questions that are being asked right now. There's no one thing that's going to get you into any of our schools. There's also no one thing that's going to keep you out of any of our schools. So you don't have to think about it on such a granular level. I wasn't involved in any community service because I spent all my time playing sports. That's okay, right? We see all different types of students.
And I think there's a big change, you know, throughout the year or throughout the 4 years. It can be a great opportunity to talk about that in other parts of your application, whether that's in an optional essay or just in the, you know, just anything else you'd like us to share, like on the Common App. If you weren't involved at all for 2 years and you got more involved, I'd love to hear more about that. Like what happened, you know, putting yourself out there, having a great experience, or maybe, you know, there's a whole year that just seems kind of blank there. Maybe, you know, you were like dealing with an illness that was kind of long term throughout junior year and you didn't really get a chance to get involved in ways. Well, we need to know that. Let us know that. So anytime there are gaps, changes, like there is so much space on, you know, the Common App on any application to kind of let us know and give us that context, which again is the most important thing. We take all that context into account.
Yeah, I'm sort of reading ahead here, and I saw there is a question about taking into account students who have moved schools a lot and how that would reflect in terms of maybe they have more short-term time commitments. And I think that adds exactly to what we're saying here, where it's a really contextual process. And so we will see that. We'll see that you have transcripts from different schools. Maybe your counselor will mention that you're new to the school. And so that's something that we know, and we know that you would not have been in the same club for 4 years if you've been to 3 different high schools. And so we consider that in the same way that we would think about the fact that if someone had an illness for a year, maybe they aren't taking part of an activity, or if they broke their leg and they were an athlete, maybe they're not able to do that sport. And so that's not something that we would like penalize a student for. It's something that we really understand and take into account.
Okay, so what about students who are high level excuse me, athletes, practices and games take up a lot of their time during the school year and the summer? If your child does not get recruited or decides not to go to the school where they were recruited and decides to go elsewhere, how is that student reviewed?